Don't you love technology when it works or doesn't work, right? Travis did a great job. And Travis, thank you for all you do for our community and Point Click Care and for all that we do. Greg and Meg, thank you so much for Provider and bringing us together. What a great opportunity. I have to tell you, I am humbled to be in your presence. You are all leaders. Whether you realize it or not, you are leaders, and you are leaders at a time when we are so in need of your leadership. So let me begin with a quote. Listen up. If your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to be more, then you are a leader. If your actions inspire others to learn more, to be more, to become more, then you are a leader. Now, those words were uttered by our 6th President of the United States, John Quincy Adams, over a couple of hundred years ago. So we have about 18 minutes to talk about the next 18 years and why your leadership is so important. You notice there that I'm at a canoe in Hawaii. Well, what wasn't part of Travis's introduction is I grew up a little small town boy in a rural community in Hawaii called Maili. And you could take all of the sort of traditional healthcare challenges and disparity in our country and all the cultural pride that you experience in our great urban centers, and you could transplant that into this beautiful beachside community in Hawaii. It was a community of working class folks who had great pride in their lives, but who really struggled with being well. And so I was 16 years old, and I had been very sickly as a child. I really didn't start being well until I hit my early teen years. I had been born very, very premature, and it presented some challenges. So when I was 16, I sat down with a legal pad, and I said, what I've got to do is I've got to become a doctor or a nurse or a nurse's aide, or back then an LPN. We're very dominant in healthcare. I've got to do that. I've got to find a way to give back. And I sat there, and what I realized was something really quickly. I realized that I was probably smart enough, but certainly not as disciplined that I needed to be, what many of you are in this room. Our colleagues from San Diego, nursing directors or nurse practitioners. That was me at 16. Couldn't pull it off. So I did, of course, what every 16-year-old does when they know they can't pull off one career. I became involved in politics. And so it was in politics that I learned very early in life, in 1976, that everybody can lead, should lead, and must lead. And I learned in politics that we had to value our elders, what we call in Hawaii our kupuna. We have so much we can learn from our kupuna. So much value, so much knowledge, so much about connecting. So let's go back to that John Quincy Adams quote, and let's unpack it a little bit. But before we do that, I want you to turn to the person to your left for a moment. And I want you to say to that person, look into their eyes, and I want you to say to that person, can I? With a question mark. Can I? Can I? And I want that person next to you to look at you, to whom you just said, can I? And I want you to focus on the emotion in that picture, and you say, can we? Now I want you to all look at those eyes right up there, and I want you to say out loud, can do. Can do. Leaders inspire others with their action. They inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to become more, to be more. Leadership is a team activity. So let's talk about some of the clues in leadership. And let's talk about why it's important. In fact, let's talk about why it's important right here in Austin, Texas today. So within 25 miles of the Hyatt here in Austin, there are 40 skilled nursing and rehab centers. And according to the population statistics here in Austin, there are a little over 60,000 people age 65 plus within that area. Now here's the interesting part. Here's the interesting part. The rate of growth of the average population in Texas is 5.4%. The population growth in Texas of people over 65 is almost 10%. Your leadership matters. Your teamwork matters. The way forward matters. For the next 18 years, we've got 18 minutes, now 13. For the next 18 years, 10,000 boomers will be turning 65 every day of the week. Every day of the week. You, my friends, are leaders, and you're leaders at a time where we need great leaders. It's not a should, it's a must. So let's talk about some of those clues first that John Quincy Adams left us, and then let's expand upon that a little bit. So leaders inspire, right? They inspire. We've all worked for them, with them, above us, below us, to our side. Leaders lead from position, wherever they are. You know, I was fortunate working at the state legislature in Hawaii to know a woman who grew up in my community. She was my elder. She was my kapuna. Her name was Frenchie DeSoto. And like my mother, she was a cleaning lady. And she was brilliant. And she had a son, in fact, a couple of sons. And they went on to great careers, a couple of them in politics. And Frenchie herself went on from cleaning the trash cans at the state capitol to being a state senator. And I learned from Frenchie and from many others that leadership isn't about title. So one of the important attributes, universal attributes of effective leaders in managing healthcare and the integration of care going forward is that you lead from where you are. And you lead together. It is a community activity. So let's start a little list. Effective leaders lead from their position, not from their title. Effective leaders build team. Effective leaders inspire. They inspire. What does that mean to inspire? It means to have a vision and to be able to articulate that vision so others sufficiently agree with you that you embark on that mission, that vision together. How many of you agree that we have a mission of engagement and empowerment in healthcare in general and in post-acute long-term care in specific? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. How many of you are committed to undertaking that? Let me hear a can do. Can do? Can do. So leaders have vision and they inspire. And you notice that Quincy Adams didn't say that leaders inspire by talking, right? He said that leaders inspire by action. Now let me ask you a quick question. How many of you out there are perfect? I don't see any hands. I'm certainly not perfect. So does a perfect leader exist? Yes or no? There is no such thing as a perfect person, and there is no such thing as a perfect leader. And so we have to accept that as we go forward to be the case. So leaders take action. They're not perfect, and they're able to communicate that message. Now, one of the things that wasn't in my bio is that I went on and I was fortunate enough to study at Johns Hopkins University. And there was one president of the United States who had a PhD and was a university professor and president, and that was Woodrow Wilson. Now, Woodrow Wilson is interesting because of his connection to Thomas Jefferson. And let me tell you why, right? Because we live in this age of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, 24-hour news cycle. In fact, it's a challenge for those of us in healthcare because somebody always has a camera, right? Somebody always has the ability to record something. And what we want them recording is something good, not something that we're going to regret later. But let's talk about this idea of leadership in this era. So it was Woodrow Wilson who started doing, again, a State of the Union address. Think about this. He was the 28th president of the United States. 28th. Y'all have a guess, again, of when we stopped doing State of the Union addresses, State of the Union speeches. Does anybody have a guess out there? Right? It was Jefferson. We did not have a State of the Union address that was delivered by speech from Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, until Woodrow Wilson, the 28th of the president of the United States. So there's a leadership lesson here. Here's what it is. Not all great leaders are verbal communicators, right? You don't have to be a great verbal communicator to be a great leader. You just have to be able to articulate your message. And that's what's important. Look at the eyes in that picture. How many leaders do you see in that picture? Shout it out. Two. Two leaders, right? 2 equals 2 leaders. When I see that picture, I see the joy and the empowerment and the engagement and the possibilities. And I don't see the limitations. I see success. So let's talk about, again, some universal attributes. So successful leaders are able to articulate, bless you, they're able to articulate a vision. They take action. They inspire others to follow. And here's what they also do. It's especially important in healthcare. They push the pause button. How many of you have an iPhone? Raise your hand. Or any type of look at that. I actually holding them up. That's great. Well, for those of you who are boomers such as me, remember that before iPhones, we had iPods. And before iPods, we had Walkmans. And before Walkmans, we had cassette players. And before cassette players, we had 8-track players. And before 8-track players, we had reel-to-reel. And they all had a pause button. That didn't get there by accident. Effective leaders know how to push the pause button and take a step back, because effective leaders, they learn and they be and they become just as the people that are following them do. And they realize in that moment that maybe in this moment of my leadership, I need to step to the left. How many of you out there are directors of nursing? Raise your hands. I can see hands. How many times have you, in your career as a director of nursing, realized that you had to take a step to the left and empower that person, that colleague, to take the lead in that moment? They just knew more in that moment, right? Well, that's what's happening with healthcare in general going forward. So let's talk and unpack a couple of really critical universal attributes of leadership, and then let's wrap it up in a minute or two. So successful leaders, effective leaders, build team, they communicate, they have passion, they follow when necessary, they negotiate, they listen, they feel. Probably the number one thing that a leader does, an effective leader does, is they understand the difference between the what and the why we've heard about in so many of our presentations already today. You see, you can make a really good career in any profession by understanding the what. You can be a Hall of Fame, you can be an all-star in your chosen profession by understanding the what. You can be the best sort of director of nursing this year by understanding the what of your work, the what of your calling, the what of your engagement with somebody else. But if you understand the why behind that engagement, I tell a story in Maryland. In Maryland, we have a requirement, a quality requirement, that somebody has an ice jug on their bedside of water, water with ice. How many of you have that in your states if you're skilled in nursing rehab care? I see a few hands going up. So the requirement is that you have this jug of water, right? And you can figure out what the requirement is about, what it's all about. It's about people staying hydrated, right? It is a what requirement. But the requirement isn't a why requirement. The requirement should be that people should be engaged and hydrated and well. It doesn't, just because you have a pitcher there with water and ice means absolutely nothing. It means nothing. So those of you that understand, those leaders that understand the why behind the what, the motivation, the interest of an individual rather than their position. My position is, I don't want to eat eggs. Your position is, you should eat eggs. We have a shared interest. that I am well in my nutrition. Whatever gets us well together is where we need to become, where we need to get to, the journey, the destination to which we need to arrive. So, to the extent that you as leaders can push the pause button going forward and understand, okay, the what of this challenge is this, but what is the why behind it? To the extent that you can do that in building your teams, you will be able to meet the challenges going forward. So, I want to tell a story about a dear friend of mine. And this person had been sick for quite some time. His name was John. He was a World War II vet, and he had lived an honorable life. He had done everything sort of his generation. He had worked hard. He had earned probably never more than $30,000 or $40,000 a year. His kids never wanted for anything. They all went to college. And John finally started having some health care problems. And they couldn't figure it out for the longest time. And then they finally figured out that John had this form of leukemia. And he could have lived for a really long amount of time. Just would have required him to take some transfusions and do that. But what was special about this conversation is that John had a couple of very engaged kids. And they got together, and they got everybody in the room, the doctors, the nurses, the members of the VA. Some people couldn't be there. And they had a blank slate family caregivers meeting. And they sat there and they said, here's the what of this situation. John is sick. He can choose to be well. There's a way he can live a long time under these circumstances. And they turned to John, and he cried, and he sobbed. And he said, I don't want to live like this. He said, I want to go into hospice. So in this particular community, hospice wasn't available, and he got hospice care in a skilled nursing and rehab center. And he had about 2 months to live. Well, wouldn't you know it, that he got into the hospice center, started eating, started pulling back on his pain meds, and he wanted to go out on activities. So they actually took him, and he got a card to be able to ride the bus and to do activities, the handy van, to be able to go to these activities. And wouldn't you know it, John lived almost a year like that. He actually got much, much stronger. And then, as one of our previous speakers said, he didn't stop eating because he was dying, right? He stopped eating, or he didn't stop eating because, you got it. I was there, and it was such an emotional time. It was his time. And people in that conversation, imagine if you had been a leader in that conversation, focused on the what and not the why. So for the 10,000 boomers who we must rely on being engaged for the next 18 years, for the people that are in our centers now, 16,000 of them across the country, for the 1 million assisted living bedrooms across this country, for the 40 skilled nursing and rehab centers within 25 miles from here, for the over 60,000 elders who are over 65 right here in Austin, I want you to know something. You are all leaders, and we're counting on you. Can I? Can we? Can do. I'm humbled. Thank you all very, very much.